Whether you're interested in or you yourself own Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, XRP, or the like, there's no denying it. Cryptocurrency is here to stay. Right now, this crypto space is taking off like a rocket ship. The blockchain is no longer a fairy tale, but a technology that has the legs to revolutionize the financial system that will forever change the world. But with so many types of cryptocurrencies out there, are we going to eventually just see a saturated, decentralized, and unregulated marketplace of altcoins and fiat money? Or is there going to be something that unifies, or at least stands out, and lead the way in bringing the crypto market to the masses in a fast, scalable, secure, and decentralized way? Today, my conversation is with Jiang. He's the COO of Harmony, a Silicon Valley startup building a next generation blockchain and protocol to help bring together and help bridge the gap between other crypto assets and potentially solve the elusive blockchain trilemma. And that's being fast, scalable, and secure. This was a conversation with amazing insights and some great knowledge bombs imparted by Lee. And remember, if you like these episodes, don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this podcast. So with that, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jiang. And we're live. Lee, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey Barry, thanks for having us.
Look, man, I think for the most part, I've been wanting to speak to you and Stephen for quite some time now, and I think a lot of the audience are interested about what you guys are up to at Harmony, and I think before we sort of get into the story of Harmony and what it's all about, I want to sort of learn about you, and I think a lot of people want to learn about the story of the founders and also the people that I interview because it's always fascinating to hear about how all of this unfolded. So, based on your history, it seems like you were probably the first investor in Harmony. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I was one of the first investors in Harmony, and we actually started out as really just a group of founders in Silicon Valley meeting up every week to talk about our ideas. And originally, the group was thinking about different ideas, right? Machine learning, blockchain came into the picture around 2017. Of course, we had known about it, but really learning that it was a technology that could scale to something that would impact billions of people. And so we started talking about that. And of course, that's how I met Stephen, the founder of Harmony, and many other collaborators through that group. So I've been living in Silicon Valley, I guess, now for 9 years. And so, it's definitely been a very interesting journey. Met a lot of cool people through the whole process.
When you met Stephen, were you sort of thinking along the same lines of him? I know that you know, Bitcoin and sort of crypto and what have you has slowly but surely sort of taken lift off. And I know that with Harmony, it's you've probably been around for a few years now. But what was the thought process like when you guys got together? The group of you. What were you thinking? How was this going to be? What was the roadmap going to look like for you guys? Over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, so I think in a lot of ways, the original vision has really stayed true, meaning that we were excited about blockchain because it is an open and permissionless way for people to participate in the economy, in finance, in open finance, and that was really that was the idea. So we had all come from working at whether it was Google, Apple, even Amazon, lots of these tech companies that had been platforms for hundreds of millions of people. But there is this new era where blockchain can enable everyone, basically, right? The original statement that we set out is open consensus for 10 billion people, and that's still really possible for this whole industry. Is it allows anyone to build on blockchain itself, and so that's stayed true with us. Of course, it's taking obviously a long time to build that vision, right? If to get adoption, to get people to even wrap their minds around what this all means and what it can do for them.
Did you have any, before all of this kicked off, did you have any idea about, were you into that sort of world of crypto, or were you completely separated from it? What was your history before Harmony?
There's actually a long history. So, my roommate, being in Silicon Valley, he was an engineer back in 2012, and he told me that there's this thing called Bitcoin, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then 2013 came around, and I had to a few demo days where there were startups pitching, and that was one of the first waves. In fact, there was a New York Times article, maybe it was front page by I think Mark Andreessen at the time, talking about how Bitcoin was going to eat the world. Maybe not those exact words, but something, they had written software was going to eat the world in 2011. So 2013 comes around, Bitcoin's going to eat the world, and it had its moment. And I think that's when I went to a demo day, and I'm pretty sure, although I can't remember exactly, I'm pretty sure I saw Coinbase demo as a startup, right? As like a
Wow.
five person startup, or maybe it was just the founder uh, at that time. And then I remember early 2014, I had a friend who was living in a co-working space, a hacker house in San Francisco, and he invited me to go see this talk uh, by some guy named Vitalik about this thing called Ethereum. So, uh, and it's so interesting because I don't have a strong recollection from that time, right? It always takes so much, in retrospect, because there's always so many startups happening and lots of new ideas that it wasn't necessarily obvious to me at the time, but of course you can see that like as it progressed, as the networks built up, that the speed in which decentralized networks can innovate, it's much faster than the traditional tech world, the traditional finance world. So I had been just kind of exposed to all that just by living here, which was really lucky. And finally got a chance to meet Stephen through actually one of my events in the Bay Area, again, just happenstance. And then we got together every week. He had been running this group of former Googlers and other entrepreneurs that got together every week. And that's really what spawned the idea. It's the social energy that actually gave life to the idea, not just of Harmony, but of all of us getting into blockchain, actually.
Yeah, I think blockchain and I think crypto and sort of that community is very different from other communities that I've been involved in. I think there are a lot of startups that pop up every day and they probably meet and forge in the same way to what you just described, meeting people at meetups or knowing people who know people. But I found that just speaking to a lot of people involved in, whether it be Bitcoin or Ethereum or any sort of, blockchain or crypto project, I think there's a very strong community and people know each other. And because it's very tight knit, I think you can make very, very strong connections in that way. And especially in Silicon Valley, the community is growing exponentially every year. And it's great to hear that something something like crypto, even though it has no tangibility in a sense, something that brings people together in such a really magical way that allows you to discuss and debate and really talk about the future of such a very important technology. And I guess that sort of leads me on to my next question in terms of your background and sort of coming into Harmony and this whole world. I mean, you have a bit of a financial background yourself. What did that really help in a way to give you better insight into what this technology was? I know that there's a lot of my friends who are not really, I guess, affiliated with finance in any way, and they want to understand more about Bitcoin, but it becomes a bit of an esoteric subject. So for you specifically, how did that unfold for you? Coming from a financial Wall Street background and then sort of getting into the blockchain crypto world?
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying that I was not technical at all. I didn't understand the technical layer. And if I can get into crypto, I think anyone can actually. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to really probably just get through the early learning curve. There will be some steep learning curve. And once you're past that, it's really interesting. And as you mentioned before, right, the community is very global. The community is 24/7 on whether it's on Twitter or Reddit or other places. And the discussions are really interesting because you can, a lot of, one of the themes for us this year is interoperability, is building harmony with the Ethereum bridge, with bridge to Binance, Bitcoin, other ecosystems that really allow us to, let innovation happen at a speed that's you cannot even imagine in traditional companies, right? Because the traditional tech companies, they don't talk to each other, they don't operate, their systems don't operate with each other as much. So and so the community is completely open. You can deploy apps on multiple chains, multiple ecosystems. So we think that interoperability is going to be de facto happening this year. But to your original question of how I got into crypto, I mean, it was really the strong social bonds of having this group of people. And I was lucky because it was in person. But as I said, like the global community, the digital community is there to support anyone who wants to get into the space. And there are a lot more people coming, right? So we are sort of past the very early adopters and what's called I think they call it the early majority, basically on the adoption curve. And people are starting, that group is starting to come in. And then of course the mass adoption is just on the horizon, actually, I think.
And that's the really exciting bit of it. I think more and more, and you hear just on the news, this is really big stuff, and it's going to change how we interact with each other, and not just on a financial level, but the endless applications of the blockchain for everyone. And I think it's always good to know that when something like this gets traction, I mean, it becomes, it gets that momentum, and then everyone starts to really piggyback on that bandwagon, and for good or bad. But I think for the most part, it's always important to make sure that technologies like this make it to the, I don't know, make it to the surface, and people understand at least on the very high level about the power of that technology. And if they want to continue to investigate and learn more about blockchain, I think it should be up to them to read upon it and do their own due diligence. Much like yourself, when you sort of got into this space, everyone is always questioning and trying to figure out, is this going to actually work? And so you mentioned the whole point about meeting Coinbase back at YC or what have you, and just to know where they are now and their recent IPO is just insane.
Yeah, and one of the interesting ways, as you mentioned, right, how to apply crypto this year is the idea of decentralized autonomous organizations, right? So it's not just financial transactions, but the way we organize and coordinate actions. And decentralized autonomous organization, which is a DAO, is actually being formed at a rate that's very quick. It's happening right before our eyes, and it allows so many ways of experimenting for people to coordinate action, and they're incentivized, right, to uh, you know do things together in a way that makes the world better or makes their communities better. And you'll start to see, I think, many of these DAOs being formed and scaling in the next 1 year. So if I had to say that, something big that is happening that people should be watching out for, that's one of the ideas.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into more of that, and it's always so interesting to hear about the different types of technologies each, I guess, I don't know, quote unquote competitor is working on, because it is sad. It's a very robust marketplace right now. There's a lot of players, and so I want to know for one, and as well as the audience is, what are you guys are up to? I know Harmony has been making waves so far in the crypto community. So for those who don't know what Harmony is, why don't you give maybe a few minute quick spiel on what it is, what you're building, and most importantly, why do you need to build this? Why is it so important right now?
Yeah. So Harmony is really born from seeing some of the challenges that we saw at that time during its founding, which was blockchain needs to scale in terms of both its speed and lower costs in order for much larger applications, global applications. So it's really improving the entire infrastructure layer for decentralized applications. And over time, we've done that by launching, our mainnet, our open staking for proof of stake system. And today, right, some of the features that you can look forward to is the protocol is very quick. Transactions will settle in 2 seconds, which means that if I were to, if I were to send you some tokens or do any type of transaction, in 2 seconds, it will be finalized and you'll be able to see the results. And the fees are incredibly low today with at less than 1 cent. So, and the idea is that we are helping, for example, Ethereum applications scale if they're running into certain bottlenecks with cost and speed on the Ethereum network. The same is true with Binance Smart Chain, helping those applications. And now that we have built bridges where you can easily bring assets from Ethereum, bring assets from Binance Smart Chain onto Harmony, it makes it easier for those applications to, interoperably work with the Harmony protocol. So you can think of us as a scaling layer one solution, but also in some ways supporting, Ethereum and supporting the Binance Smart Chain applications.
So is it really like a sort of a cross-chain financial or cross-chain layer where you're able to form these bridges to other assets, if you will, and for example, the Ethereum bridge, um, being able to utilize a lot of their features and really harmonize that onto your what you're building at the moment. So it sounds like there's a lot of value there, and you mentioned earlier about the cost in the transaction, the speed in the transaction, which is very important, especially when you want to scale. And so, can you just quickly provide a few thoughts on what that means for something like Harmony and how it competes, and probably how does it perform in terms of other chains out there? Because I get the sense that one of the biggest challenges here in terms of making sure that something like this is available to the masses and can be used by pretty much anyone is the scalability aspect of it. So do you want to just shed some light on how that works?
Yeah, so we've designed our protocol to be scalable, secure, and decentralized with external validators. And as you mentioned before, right, we serve as a hub by having a Ethereum bridge, a Binance Smart Chain bridge, and soon Bitcoin bridge and other bridges to other ecosystems. You can ideally use access DeFi on all the major ecosystems without necessarily needing to go to each one of them. There could be something like a wallet or portal in which you can that runs on the Harmony protocol, but because we have these bridges, you can access all the DeFi products without necessarily figuring out creating a different wallet for each chain. And so that's one of the value propositions of being a hub and being interoperable. As far as scale and speed, that is very important to end users, right? Right now, we're in all of blockchain, we're talking about 1 million DeFi users, right? That's a tiny number compared to what the world can see and how big the open economy can be. And so a lot of people currently are priced out of DeFi or priced out of using blockchain because when they start, they have to pay $100 transaction fee. Okay, that's a non-starter for, I don't know what percentage of the world, maybe 98% of the world couldn't even start today. And so that problem really needs to be solved technically, and our team is one of the teams solving it. But as far as competition, I think it's still so early. We are not necessarily competing. Of course, we have to be fast and affordable and easy to use, but we are all trying to expand the market to be 10, 100 times larger than it is today. So just to give an interesting stat, I saw that the top 100 DeFi protocols today is worth less than one of the large banks in the world, right? And you ask me 10 years from now, that's not going to be the case. These things are going to really grow and be used by a lot more people.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the coolest things is the fact that the market cap, I suppose, is relatively minute right now, but then as you start to see all of these things exponentially grow, it's going to outvalue a lot of the financial institutions and corporations out there by orders of magnitude. And I think that's just because of the sheer interest, and people are just really getting into it, and they believe in it as well. And I think that's one of the philosophical things about crypto is that it's more of like a religion, because when you speak to people who love Bitcoin, they really adore it, and they will put it on a pedestal and they'll try to defend it to their heart's content. And then there's people who are behind Ethereum, and folks are behind Harmony and what have you. And so it sounds like there's this very strong tight knit community. It's also like a religion, and there's a lot of philosophy behind this as well. And so when it comes to Harmony and trying to consolidate and being able to extend olive branches, if you will, to other types of cryptocurrencies and forming these bridges, I think that's really important. And I think for a lot of people out there, it's going to provide a lot of value as well. So in terms of providing additional value and obviously making you guys scale and what have you, we all talk about that I think we call it the trilemma. Do you want to provide just some context about what the trilemma is all about, so people can understand what are the real challenges in doing something like this?
Yeah, so the trilemma is a common problem facing blockchain, where you have to try to improve the security, the scalability, and the decentralization of the protocol. And it's not always easy. There's some projects that are very fast, very performant, high performance, but they're not very decentralized, meaning they only have a small number of node operators that can easily coordinate, and so they don't have that problem. There are others that are much slower, but they're very decentralized. But the problem you run into is when you have so many actors and so many people to coordinate with, progress is much slower and upgrades much slower. And so we think of the trilemma not as like you have to pick trade-offs, but to expand the entire triangle, right? All 3 points. And that's the way the technical architecture is developed with sharding and proof of stake, where you can scale linearly. As you have more nodes join the network, you can put them in different shards, and you can have any number of shards on the network. So we really design the system from the ground up to be scalable over time as more people join the network. And really, it's actually based a lot upon some of the things that Ethereum 2.0 has been talking about, and it's been discussed for a long time. It's just that we were able to build the protocol from scratch with this design, whereas some of the older systems had legacy design choices, and so they have to change, which is not very easy. And so that's a challenge that they're facing over time. And there are other protocols that make different trade-offs, right? Some are, as I mentioned, more centralized to get more speed. Some are, making different trade-offs. But we really thought that we could, as engineers and PhDs from some of the best companies, that we could not only think about the best architecture, but also the most important thing about Harmony is putting those innovations into production and actually building them into the protocol itself. So that's always been our focus, is to ship, for a lack of a better word, is just to deliver the update, deliver the code, and make sure that it's working. And so we've gone through all the, I would say we were very battle tested. We launched mainnet for 2 years now, and it's gone through a lot of real world testing, lots of applications built on it. Staking has been running for over a year now, and so that's those are the things that like we're really focused on, is to bring the best production, but best research into production.
A lot of people have been talking about the decentralization of that triangle quite a lot, and there's a lot of participants in the market who are trying to do that. But there's a lot of criticisms as well on what decentralized actually means. I know that there's been a lot of criticism on Ripple for having a lot of influence on their protocol and XRP in particular. And a lot of people are saying that, how can it be truly decentralized when there's a governing body that's influencing the protocol, who's developed it, and there's a community behind it, right? So what's your, I guess, your argument or your feedback to people who say that, well, you guys are a company, you're a company, a Silicon Valley company, a startup, you guys are building this, there's funding, there's investment in your company, who's to say that at some point in the future you might have plans, and those plans might conflict with the rest of what the community believes is right, and there's a lot of conflict of interest. So how do you separate the decentralization from what you as a company are trying to achieve for the community?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked me this question. And we have a lot of updates on this front, which is, the protocol itself today actually is not controlled by us, the company. It is, we don't have the vetoing power to make changes to the protocol. It has to be done by the community. And so there's actually a process in which validators can propose changes to the protocol. The validators will vote, and if those votes are passed by the validator community based on their tokens that they've staked and the voting on, then those changes can be implemented by the team. And so that's the beginning, right? It's one of the first steps. In the future, there can be many multiples of teams or people working on protocol changes, and as long as enough of the validators upgrade and accept those changes to the protocol, those can be done without any and they may be done without any input from the original core team. And so the original core team's only duty is to it's almost like we're launching this, we're like raising this child, but at a certain age the child needs to leave the house, and they'll live their own life the way that they want. And so we really see that as our job, right? Is to be the initial to kickstart the project. But even at this point, the community will propose, they'll vote on changes, they will make a lot of these decisions, and they'll be making more decisions over time, including even how to run marketing campaign, how to change the protocol, how to spend the treasury, and all these other things that hopefully, you'll start to see that actually very soon.
I think that's that's interesting to see how these sort of projects evolve. And for me, it's really rewarding to see such a strong, feedback loop between the community and also the developers and the core team who've developed that. And I think a lot of people will make analogies to Linux, and have that open source community of But at the same time, inevitably there'll probably be conflicts here and there, and it's important to resolve those conflicts as quickly and as smoothly as possible. But I think the way that companies like yourself are like Harmony is doing is interesting to see how that unfolds over time, especially as the community grows and grows. People will have more voices to say about what that future lies. So, I guess the thing I want to bring up now is about the future of Harmony and where do you see yourselves? Because as you mentioned before, you're kickstarting the project, but over time, do you see yourselves playing more of a lesser role? And how does that tie in with the business model of Harmony, in the sense that in terms of making revenue and becoming more of a for-profit company, are there certain ways you're trying to maintain the network and make sure that you can use whatever means you have to make sure that that network can grow through financial means? So do you maybe have a token yourself that you're issuing? So how does that all work?
Yeah. So we do have a token, and but it's a very different than any traditional business that you can imagine, right? We're not here to necessarily. There's no concept of making a profit. It's a open and decentralized network that has a utility token in which the token is used for, whether it's for staking, for transaction costs, for other utility to bring usage onto the platform. And so in the long run, right, the well, even today, the network itself is very separate from the Harmony Foundation, which is only a small player in the entire network. We can propose things, we can direct things, we can suggest, give ideas, but now there are applications being built on Harmony without, sometimes, well, definitely without our permission, and sometimes even without us knowing it. And projects are being launched, and that's the way it should be. It's just like, no one knows what's going on the internet. No one entity knows, right? And that's the way it must be in the future. Which is, our job is to, as I mentioned, get the network to be the best infrastructure for anyone to come and build decentralized applications, launch projects, launch their own tokens. And it's not for us to say what's good or what's bad, even as long as people find it useful, those projects can continue. And the really amazing thing now is that those projects are building their own community, and they're doing their own governance, and they're voting on their own changes and how to do what they should be doing. So it's like, in some ways, we created a planet, and on top of the planet, there are countries being created, and those countries each have their own way of doing things, and it's great. And maybe within those countries, there are cities, there are regions and cities being built within those countries, subgroups. So it's just amazing to see.
That's a nice analogy to use. That's really crazy to think about, and I guess you're really breaking the structure up in and layer by layer, and you know, there's so many entities within that, and just to think about the possibilities and all the use cases that can come of it. I think that's really exciting to hear about. And for those who probably are not familiar with the crypto world or who are just starting to get into it, I think, it's something to look into, and choosing whatever piece of asset or protocol is completely up to you. But, I hope that maybe Harmony itself has plenty of very strong, documentation and information about how you guys how you guys operate and work. And I feel like that's becoming more of a strength rather than a weakness for you guys, and making sure that if some things can be easily read and understood, then it's going to be more widely accepted. Is that one of the tenets of Harmony, to make sure that when someone comes into this world of Harmony, they want to be able to absorb as much information as possible and then get off to the races as quickly as possible as well?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really important point. And the entire documentation and the user onboarding, developer onboarding experience is something that's very important to us, and we keep improving it. We know it's an area that we can do much better. Not just us, but I think in all of crypto, there's probably a lot of friction, to be honest, for so many people, right? There are people who are excited and interested, but as soon as you tell them you have to keep your seed phrase, or you have to do this action, you have to take these 12 steps before you can even start doing anything, that's a barrier. And we've been working on both making it easy for the community to learn, whether it's like writing chatbots basically on Telegram that will give you all the information you need to start or to write much better documentation, and even to create new tools and apps that you can use where it's very easy to, let's say, stake, right? You don't need to download a Chrome extension and put your tokens there. You can use one of our partners' wallets to stake instead, right? It's a few clicks. It's just like depositing into Robinhood or one of these apps, and you're off and running. So that is something very core to what we think about. And I know that this year, especially if you look at what, let's say, Venmo is doing, or what some of these other apps are doing, right? They're making it easier to onboard users, and that's where the whole world is going. We cannot expect to grow crypto 10x by doing the same thing that we've been doing the last few years, and we really need to speak to a new audience.
Do you I want to quickly go back to the sort of like the triangle and the trilemma, because I think that's very important. And you mentioned that you wanted to extend both all the edges out, not at the cost or the opportunity cost of another one. So I assume obviously it's easier said than done, and there's a lot of challenges there. So in sort of your opinion and sort of your purview of what's been happening at Harmony and all the amazing engineering that's been working behind the scenes, what are the sort of the biggest challenges that you're facing right now? And if there are challenges, how are you going to overcome those in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we always strive to get even better at is open development and even more decentralization, right? That's the challenge that many crypto projects face, because in the beginning, it's always just maybe one person's idea or one team's idea, and you need to quickly turn that into a much more broader base, community-led project. And so we found really great traction with Gitcoin, one of our partners, to do open development. We have many technical bounties that we're launching every week, so that the entire community can participate and make improvements to the protocol. Because at the end of the day, like, instead of having the power of 10 developers or 20 developers, you should be harnessing the power of 100,000 developers. And that's the beauty of this ecosystem, which is, for the first time, right, the blockchain industry has created a way to incentivize people anywhere to make something better together in a coordinated effort, right? It used to be that, like, let's say you're a traditional tech company, you would have to hire all these hundreds of thousands of people to, make your product better and scale and grow. And now you don't necessarily need to hire them. You can coordinate through on-chain incentives, right? Whether that's token or, something similar to that. And that's allowing this entire industry to work at, I would argue, 10x the speed of any other existing industries.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really exciting to hear about. And I know that for a lot of the people, they really want to see where this goes as well. And, a lot of people that I know are constantly asking me to sort of interview people like yourself, just to really bring this sort of technology and bring whatever you guys are doing to the masses. And it really paints a very clear picture, hopefully, about not just the applications, but also the potential of such technologies to help with their normal lives. And I think for the most part, we'll be seeing a lot of more blockchain, more crypto being introduced in our daily lives, whether we like it or not. And that's going to be for the better, I hope. And I feel like there's definitely a lot of applications on top of that. And speaking of applications, it's really about, I really want to sort of close with you and think about the future of crypto. Right now we have, NFTs, for example, and that's going insane. But I want to get your thoughts about that whole world of, NFTs, smart contracts. Where do you see that going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, yeah. I think we can talk both about NFTs and decentralized finance, right? They're two sides of the house, maybe, or two sides of the coin. But the way I think about NFTs is that it's a unique representation of your work and your effort. Let's say you can create this podcast. This video itself, today's podcast, could be an NFT that someone values so much that they would be willing to, pay you directly for it, and you can verify it that this is created by you, on this day at this time with an on-chain transaction by minting this file, this audio file or video file as an NFT. And I think that NFTs will in some ways, take over every creation that anybody does on the internet, at least. And there's no reason why it should not, or it cannot. So instead of thinking about creating your content for centralized companies or uploading it into a centralized platform, there will, I think, in the near future, be very easy ways, very smooth ways for any creator to create any type of content, whether it's audio, video, images into NFTs, and then go directly to the end user, right? And so, we have one of these platforms on Harmony. It's called DaVinci, and there's already hundreds of artists creating thousands of items within 1 month. And so, I think there's definitely a lot of potential, and there's basically no barriers, and that's what's allowing this to grow, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum with decentralized finance, I guess my belief is that every asset will be represented on chain as well. So whether that is, your savings account, whether that's just transferring money to your relatives in a different country, whether that is a representation of the real estate that you own, of the home or house that you own, it's just a better technology, technically speaking, than whatever current banking system use as their ledger of tracking whether you own this or that, right? And there's so many countries in the world in which that system just is not good. There's no good property rights tracking in a lot of countries. They don't know if you own this piece of land or if the other person owns the piece of land, and that's a crazy concept. But if everything is put on chain, of course you have to work with the real world in some ways, right? Regulatory and others. But any asset that exists today in the traditional world can be represented as a decentralized financial asset in blockchain within even the next 5 years, let's say. So I guess my answer to that is everything is the future.
Yeah, I feel like I agree, and yeah, we'll see where this goes. And it's great to know that companies like you are really pushing the envelope in trying to optimize and innovate on such a bedrock of technology that is ripe for innovation. I think definitely it's really exciting to see Harmony, as well as a bunch of other chains, just try to push it and see what can be achieved with the technology in our hands. And for me in particular, I'm really excited about how this will transpire and what those applications will mean. And so I guess my last question to you is in terms of Harmony and the future of it. You mentioned before that you definitely want to see a lot of these assets be digitized, but also have traceability as well. Um, as someone who has be coming from finance, who's been working in Silicon Valley, what's your feedback and your message to people who really want to get involved with Harmony? What can they do? How can they be involved in any way they can? Because I think contributing to this type of technology is going to be it's going to be very important for all of us. So, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, for sure. We have actually a very large campaign to have open development. So if you're a developer, you can work with us on building the core protocol. You can also work with us on launching apps for basically users, and it's just a new way, right? Let's say you're a mobile developer today. You might have built for iOS and Android, but I would urge you to learn about what it would mean to build on blockchain and to access that entire world and think about new ways to structure incentives and think about new ways to access users and to make an impact. Whereas you may have the traditional experience, but this is where I think there will be new opportunities, right? And as users, there are lots of ways to kind of learn and get involved. Obviously, as I mentioned, there will be a learning curve, but join some of these communities, whether it's just jumping onto Telegram or following us on Twitter or jumping into our Discord, whether it's Harmony or any of the other projects, right? There's so many ways to learn and get in, and everything basically is open source. I don't just mean the code, I mean the knowledge base, right? And you can, if you spend enough time on the internet, you can basically learn almost everything you need about blockchain itself. Whether it's, everything is a white paper. There are no proprietary business plans in this space, and so that's the beauty of it, is that we can welcome so many more people by making everything available to anyone.
Amazing. And I will put all the links to the channels, to the website in the show notes below. And then finally, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so I'm very easy to reach on Twitter. So you can put my Twitter handle. That's probably the easiest way, right? And I would encourage anyone to kind of follow some of the blockchain people on Twitter, just to learn what the conversation is, what it's about, and just start, right? There's no easy way, but just to do it.
Awesome. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining this episode. It was super knowledgeable. I'd call myself a crypto enthusiast, but I think definitely speaking to people like yourself and others is always enlightening, and you always learn something new. And so I definitely encourage everyone to do the same. If they even have the slightest inkling of wanting to learn anything about it, just open up your browser and just start typing away. And Harmony is definitely one of those companies that I've been following for quite some time. I met Stephen myself and a few years ago, and he was very gung ho and excited about this. And I'm really glad to see it's starting to get legs now, and really starting to make moves. So with that, Lee, thank you so much for joining the episode, and hopefully you can come back for round two, next time, and we can talk about how Harmony is doing.
Yeah, Barry, thank you for the opportunity, and great to share with your audience today.